Welcome to all you storm watchers, storm chasers, and Leanierologists out there. Welcome to another edition of Tempest Talks, where we discuss lean philosophy, principles, and tools, and how they impact our personal and professional lives. Today, we will be discussing starting again with my good friend, Courtney Borjas. By way of introduction, Courtney has over 20 years of project management and development experience. She was born and raised in San Diego, California, and attended UCLA and earned a bachelor's degree in political science. Courtney started her career over 20 years ago, which I can't believe that we can actually say that, as a technical writer, right, for Northrop Grumman. While at Northrop Grumman, she became a Lean Six Sigma Green Belt. Later, she became an integration manager and then a project manager running software installations on the Naval Fleet. In 2013, she moved to Texas and left me, where she joined GameStop as an IT project manager. Courtney has worked in multiple areas of IT, but is now settled into the role of manager of HR technology. In her spare time, she enjoys reading, which is an understatement, where I'm going to have to ask you how many books you read in a year. It's like something crazy. She plays board games. She also loves new restaurants. She's quite the foodie. She's the person to ask for good food in any city. And she loves going to sporting events and traveling with her husband, David, and her family. And if you couldn't tell, she's a good friend of mine as well. Courtney and I have known each other, goodness, how long has it been? It's probably 12 years now?
Yeah, 12 years.
It's been a long time. I still can't believe we can say we've been in industry for 20 years. But
I know, it's crazy to me to say that, but yeah.
It's crazy. Oh my goodness. Have I missed anything by way of introduction for you?
No, I don't think so.
Awesome. So I decided, at the end of the year, one thing that people are always thinking about is, New Year's resolutions and that kind of thing. But oftentimes what gets forgotten is starting again. So when I say starting again, what does that mean to you?
So starting again for me doesn't really mean starting again necessarily. It means really taking a look at what I've done in the past and what I need to do to change it.
Nice.
Because there's always things that are good about what you've done most of the time. A lot of times you just need to tweak it to make it more efficient, more productive, or just make it fit your lifestyle more. Because what worked at one part of your personal life may not work now. I know you understand that. We were both older when we got married. And so in the last few years, adjustments had to be made to how we've done things.
For sure.
Right. And it's not like we were starting again. It was adjustments. It was, okay, how does this process that I use to buy groceries, how does that fit in with another person now?
Oh, I like that.
For me, like that's kind of the big thing. I'm not a big New Year's resolutions person. I have always, especially in the last like 5 to 10 years, I have really focused on words.
Oh, that's cool.
And I'm not very good at following my words necessarily. But I think it really gets me, okay, am I being like, for the year of 2020, my word was consistency. There were a lot of things that I wanted to do in 2020.
Wow.
I can tell you that word did not happen.
Yeah, kind of changed, right?
The word should have been change, right? I think 2020 taught us a lot about changing and adapting and, okay, how are we going to do this when we can't work from an office?
Yeah.
When things have to be over, Teams or Zoom or Skype or whatever tool you decide to do.
Yeah.
And I think that's really what starting again means. It really does mean adapting, right?
Yeah. I like that. Adapting. It's that's a very continuous improvement way of looking at it, for sure.
Yes. And so I can't even think of what year that I first became like a green belt and was introduced to Lean Six Sigma. I think it was 2005 or 6.
Oh, okay.
It was 5. And they were having a class at Northrop Grumman. And one of the projects that they wanted to focus on was one of my projects. And so they're like, we're sending you this training and then we're going to do something. And I was like, okay. What does this mean?
Yeah.
And, I had these, biweekly, multiple times a week meetings with this black belt that I didn't really know. And right, all of this stuff was happening. But for me, it affected me personally and professionally, because I don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah.
That's not something I do. I always try to look at it very logically and very much like, okay, what is working? What is working and what isn't? Because if a process has been around for long enough, something is working.
Right.
And part of it is a lot of the processes I found, I know with my current position, is processes were created because of the technology we're using.
Yes, for sure.
Right. And it's not that they're bad processes, but as we move to new technology and new things happen, we've got to look at, okay, how can this process become better? What can we do differently? We working in technology, we're constantly upgrading software and changing the software that we use. And so it's constant, okay, to like my business partners, okay, I understand that that's your current process, but what would it be if you could do anything?
Yeah. The sky's the limit, nirvana kind of thinking, right?
Exactly. And it's hard to think about it that way.
Oh, for sure. It's super hard.
Right?
Yeah.
A lot of these people have been doing payroll or benefits or
decades
or software development for decades. And to switch it up on them is like mind-boggling.
Yes, it is. Especially when they've spent so many hours of their lives working on something. They're kind of, it's their baby in essence.
It
right?
is. And a lot of times they've created these processes, right? And there were great reasons to create them. But that doesn't mean we have to do it that way all the time. And I think I'm a lot better with change in my professional life than I am in my personal life, quite honestly.
Sometimes I think most of us are.
We all have problems with change in your personal life, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's good to do it. I was talking to my stepdaughter, she's 22, and she was talking about how, her and her husband, they got married 6 months ago, and they were talking about how they have these jobs and they don't really want to leave them because they like the people they work with and they like the situation that they're in. And I told her, I said, that's great. Comfort zone stuff is great. Right?
Yeah, for sure. Makes you feel warm.
You feel warm, you feel comfortable. You probably enjoy going to work.
Yep.
But you don't grow. There's no growth in the comfort zone.
Totally.
There's no growth in just doing the same thing you're doing all the time. And so I told her that no growth comes from comfort. And, it's the same thing with any adversity we have, any trials we have, it's the same thing, right? We don't grow. And so sometimes the best thing we can do for ourselves is make that move, quit that job,
leave us for Texas.
Change the process, right? And figure something else out. And it's painful and it doesn't feel good, but you have to do it. Yeah.
Well, like to your point, it's the only way that we grow.
Yeah.
I think that's probably why people have a hard time changing, because they don't want to mess with the status quo. It feels too good.
Yes.
And so it's like, I'm not going to try that different kind of food because I'm not sure I'm going to like it. And then I would have wasted my, dollar spent or whatever.
Yes.
But if you don't spend that money and try that food, you'll never know that, Thai food is your favorite food.
I'm a big person. When I find a restaurant that I like, I find what I like on the menu. I get it every time.
Yes.
I get the exact same thing. I go to a new burger place. I almost always get a bacon cheeseburger.
Yes, same.
Like just to try first, because I want to see if it's good. And because I know I like it and I know it'll probably be great. Like they're not going to mess it up.
Yeah, it's hard to mess it up when bacon's involved.
Yeah, true too. Yes.
So true. So, the tough problems, I agree. I think it's easier in a work setting to be more flexible and change and that kind of stuff than it is in our personal lives. But, when we face tough problems, and our solution doesn't actually go so well, it's even harder, at least I've found for myself, it's even harder to get up and brush myself off and try again because the solution didn't work. What kinds of advice do you give to somebody that, is struggling with just, let's try something new?
I mean, that's a tough one. I think it's tough for everyone because you only went down the path to try something new because you thought it would be better.
Right. Yeah.
Um, and again, I think part of it is, okay, probably not all of it failed.
Yeah.
And it's easy to look at the failures. You're your own worst critic,
Oh,
right?
for sure. Yeah.
And it's easy to look at the failures and be like, it all failed, but it really probably didn't.
Yeah.
Like something worked. And what was it? And
Yeah.
if you reframe it in your mind that way, okay, well, what can we build off of? Okay, well, that part worked. Okay, what if we did this instead? And I think that's it's easier to look at it that way, I think sometimes, but we're our own worst critic. We're our own toughest, judgment.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Hands down. Well, and some folks, and we won't go into it, but there are some folks, that struggle with starting again because there's mental issues that haven't been dealt with. And if there's anybody watching and you're struggling with, getting out of bed and that kind of stuff, please seek out a professional and get professional support for that. This is more, I failed on this one particular project. I don't know that I could invest my time in this again because I just spent 6 months of my life working on this and it didn't work. And you're absolutely right. We've got to look at it, what things did work and what things do we need to adjust. I love how you said that it's adjustments because it really is. It's what needs to be adjusted so that we can accomplish the goal that we actually set that we were going to do.
Yeah. And I mean, I think sometimes it may be a failure for what you were trying to solve,
Yeah.
but it could be a solution for something else.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Right. And you might find something, oh my goodness, I didn't realize that could work this way. And it's hard to figure that out. You may not be necessarily the person that can figure that out even, but you've got to have, that's why I think when it comes to like project teams and things like that, it's important to have people kind of almost outside the actual team that does it normally to ask those questions, right? I know at GameStop, it's the project managers don't sit within any particular department. They have their own department.
Oh, interesting.
Which is helpful, I think, in a lot of ways. I mean, I'm no longer a project manager there, but it's good from that standpoint in that they ask questions that the people that are actually doing the work don't always ask.
Yeah. So they're not like operationally focused only.
No,
they're broad company focused.
They are. And like, even for me, being in IT versus being in the business, it's good because I ask different questions. And I know I understand enough about their business process that I can ask questions that they may not have thought of. And from a project management standpoint, that's the important part about the project manager too, is having that just outside look at it. And that's something that you don't always have a chance to do in business. Yeah, because most people don't want to be part of a project that doesn't affect their stuff.
Yeah.
But having that outside look of somebody who's just coming in like, oh, well, what's supposed to happen?
Yeah. Why isn't this working? Why do we put it over there?
But like, I don't understand.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that outside opinion can sometimes help too.
Yeah.
And sometimes just talking it out, right? About the failure that you had really helps too, right?
Oh, yeah.
I use my husband as a sounding board, and he's like, I have no idea what you're talking about, but it all sounds good when you say it.
I love it. Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
But it's helpful because he's an outside set of eyes too. Like he's not in it every day,
Exactly.
dealing with it, which is a great way to handle it. I know those of us that have been doing lean for a really, really long time, we like to have the outside eyes because of that fact. They ask those questions that it's like, wow, I see this every day. This is how we've always done it. And they're the ones that ask the question, why have we always done it this way? Like,
well, I will say this too. I think the software industry development community is they probably would never say that they are going more lean,
right.
but going from waterfall development to, say, agile development
Yes,
is a more lean way of doing business.
it is.
And it's not something everyone's comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I came from the government definitely does waterfall development. They want all the requirements up front, and you've got to meet all those requirements. And it may take you 5 years, and the requirements really don't fit what they want at the end of that 5 years anymore.
Right.
But like with agile development, you're constantly readjusting. And to me, that is a very lean way of doing business, because you're looking at, okay, what's the end goal, not what goes in between. And you're really looking at the priorities of the business at the time, and you're pivoting very quickly. So I think that software is going more lean, even if they wouldn't necessarily say it.
Admit it. Yeah.
Like, I don't think any software development would ever say, Lean Six Sigma, that's it. But they are trying to go that way.
Yeah, because it just makes sense. It's common sense.
It's common sense.
Yeah.
And that was, so I remember one project I was on, and it was like to make software installations cheaper on board Navy ships, right?
Oh yeah, of course.
They cost millions of dollars.
Oh,
some of these,
yeah,
right?
if not billions.
And I was just a small portion of the install. And they were like, well, we've got to do it. We've got to figure out the problem faster. And I was like, I've only got 12 ships we can even test this on.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Like,
sounds like aerospace.
And we only do 3 ships a year.
Yep.
And these installs take 12 weeks each. Like, you've got to give me time to like, okay, we think this is the problem, to test it.
Yeah.
Like, to actually make sure that is that's the process, then come back and test it on the next one to make sure that we fixed it.
Yeah.
And they were like, well, it has to be done today, like this month. And I'm like, you can't fit something into a schedule just to fit your needs.
Yeah, exactly. And you can't force a square peg into a round hole either. And a lot of the thinking, I'd say 20 years ago, when we both started in the industry, right? It was that thinking. So we've got to figure out how to fit this square peg into this round hole and do it as fast or cost effective as possible. We weren't thinking about how do we fix the problem? Like, why is it a square peg? Why is it not a round peg? We weren't really asking those kinds of questions. Whereas today we're like, why is that a square peg? We've got to be, here like tomorrow afternoon. This isn't like 12 weeks from now. Tomorrow afternoon, we got to make that round. And how are we going to do it? Right. So it's almost common sense. Like, even if they're prescribing to lean, they don't know that it's lean.
Agreed. Well, and it's asking the right questions, right?
Totally. Yeah.
I mean, it's looking at, okay, what's something that's affecting a lot of people
Yeah.
and costing a lot of money. Like,
Exactly.
like, there might be other problems that we could solve that
Mhm.
would save us a little bit.
Yeah.
And we should focus on those. We should definitely talk about those.
Yeah.
But what's the biggest bang for its buck right now?
Yeah.
Like,
Exactly.
let's really focus on that for 6 weeks and see what happens.
Yeah. Because I mean, the speed of IT
Yeah.
um, is got to be insane. You know, we talk about high
Yes.
volume and speed, or you know, in automotive and other industries like that. But in IT, I mean, your iPhone is outdated the day you buy it.
Yes. Well, yes, absolutely. And I think the other thing that I think that we have to realize too is not everything can be solved with technology,
True. True. Amen. Yes.
right? We get requests all the time in my department, like, can you put this as part of the system? No, we can't configure that
Yeah.
because it'll have all of these other impacts if we do that. And you don't want to affect all of those things.
Yeah.
Some of it's just training,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And
And
coaching.
and
Yeah.
coaching and making sure, this person knows what their job is.
Hmm. Yeah. It's
It's
so true.
it's not about technology at all. It's about making sure people know, well, where to find the help that they need and
Yeah.
where just how to do their job.
Yeah.
Because quite honestly, I don't think we focus on that enough. A lot of times it is, if like any turnover does happen with new jobs, it's it's about it's somebody that's turning it over that has, like, because the person already left, right?
Mhm.
And they don't actually know what that person did, but they're just kind of reviewing, okay, this is now your responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're just figuring it out on the fly,
Sure.
right? And it's hard. That kind of stuff is really hard because for some of us, we've been doing it for so long that there's no, even if I tried to write a document about all the things I do, I couldn't cover everything because
No.
some of it's just second nature.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so true. A couple weeks ago, I was forced to think about a problem a little bit differently. And I've got to admit, it was really hard for me to get in that headspace because I did it naturally.
Yes.
So I had to like really think through, oh my gosh, how do I, get to root cause? I'll just use that as an example. How do I get to root cause? Because because I've been doing it for so long, I naturally jump to the tool that I know is going to help me solve the problem because I've seen this movie before, right? Like,
Yes.
so I know how to solve it, if you will, for this. But it was really really difficult for me to actually take a step back and be like, how do I do that?
Yeah.
And write down step by step, this is how I do it. I had done it before, but it was 10 years ago I had done it.
Mm-hmm.
And my process has changed because technology improved, the process itself improved, even though it wasn't, 100% in the computer system or any of that. It still improved. So things had changed from 10 years ago.
Yeah. It's constant. The only constant is change, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Do you think that change is easier for folks that, prescribe to a methodology like lean, or do you think it's about the same for everyone?
I think it's probably the same for everyone, quite honestly. Um, you know, I think change is hard. Change is hard.
It is.
Um, and the thing about change at work is that everyone is always like, well, it's work. Don't take it personally.
Yeah, yeah.
But work is personal. It is.
Huh, huh.
Because where do we spend our most of our waking hours?
Yeah,
At
it's
work,
true. It's at work.
right?
Mhm.
I put my whole self into my work.
Yeah.
And when something happens that, you know, I'm like, how am I going to adjust to this? Like, it is personal. I have to go through a personal journey on that. And so
Yeah.
when we're changing processes for somebody else, it's the same thing for them.
Yeah.
I think it helps when we come in and we say, we understand, we want to help, we're adjusting our process as well in most cases, right?
Yeah.
But it's hard. I mean, I can tell you, I've been married 2.5 years, and marriage is hard. Marriage
Yeah.
is no joke.
Yeah.
And it is a constant adjustment. It is
Yep.
constant communication. It is constant, okay, what worked as a single woman does not necessarily work with, my husband and 3 stepchildren. Like,
Yeah.
it is an
Totally.
adjustment every single day.
And
And
it's different for everyone too.
it is a different situation for every person too.
Yep. Exactly.
So it's not easy. And
Mm-mm.
for me, it hasn't been any easier to change just because I feel like I'm pretty good at it. Like, I'm good at the process of change.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is. Yeah.
But it's still a process.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like maybe for certain types of problems, going through the process of change is a lot quicker because we've seen it before and had to go through it. But if we're introduced to a problem that we haven't dealt with before or seen before, then the process takes a little bit longer because we're getting
and even now, like, something that works today in my marriage may not work
in a couple years
from now, right?
Yeah. 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 Because people grow and adapt.
People grow and adapt. Right now, we have stepkids that, I have stepkids that live with me half time.
Yeah.
3 years from now, we won't.
Yeah.
Like, they will be grown. And so how does that change, like, Dave and I's relationship versus now? Like, because it will.
Yeah.
So it's just constant. I think change is just hard. And anyone who tells you it's not is probably lying to themselves, quite honestly.
Agreed. I could not agree more. It's so true because, I was thinking about this. I had a friend from, goodness, she corrected me yesterday. We've known each other since preschool. So
Oh, wow.
I introduced her as somebody that I knew since high school, and she's like, preschool. I was like, oh, that's right. We have known each other for that long. Anyway, we were talking about like how our perspectives had changed based off of, experience. And she's dating a really great guy right now. And I've been married for 5 years now. And I look back, at my relationship with Adrian, and I think, wow, it's the way I see things now is different even than it was, when we first got married.
Yes.
And our first year of marriage was wild because we were apart for most of it, and trying to make an adjustment for that because he was in another country and wasn't allowed to travel here, made things difficult as well. So, the adjusting to the toothpaste and stuff wasn't really a concern for our first year because
it was for your second.
Single. Yes.
It was for your second.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, and we were talking about, how things have changed with our nieces and nephews and so forth, because we don't have any kids. The nieces and nephews and how they've all gotten married now, and how that has changed the dynamics in the family as well, because now we have more, experience in different family units coming into the core, what did they call it? The nuclear family.
Yeah.
So we have different experiences coming in and how that changes our family dynamics as well. It's all good. I mean, we're all growing and learning and all of that, which is wonderful, but it's very different. Constant change.
Yeah. So I had an experience where, I'm really close to my sister's kids, and I took my stepdaughter and 2 of my nieces to see Frozen, the Broadway show Frozen.
Nice.
And on the way home, my nieces were going to spend the night at my house, and I was going to drop Aubrey on my stepdaughter off at her mom's house. And she, my youngest niece, who's 6, was like, "You're not her mom?" And I was like,
Oh, interesting.
"No." And she's like, "What do you mean you're not her mom?" And so we had to explain to her that, my husband was married before David, and that Aubrey has a mom, and they're not married anymore. But my youngest niece doesn't remember anything but Dave.
Right.
Because Dave and I have been together now 4 years.
Yeah, so most of her life.
And so she was just like, well, he's always been around.
Mhm.
Like, she didn't understand. And like, her perspective is so different than like
Wow.
my oldest niece. And it was just like, I didn't even think about the fact that she doesn't remember that.
Yeah. Wow, that's so interesting. Yeah. Well, and that impacts the culture of the family too.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just, it's stuff like that it's easy to forget,
Oh
like
yeah.
how
Easy.
different things were, even 5 years ago, right? Like how much lives have changed, and
Yeah. Yeah.
it's all of that stuff.
It totally is. Well, and going back to 2020, right? It changed everything for everyone. Not only was it, our work organizations, it changed individuals as well.
Yeah.
And there's a major, issue with mental health and people feeling comfortable and able to leave the house. I have several friends who were not, agoraphobic before the pandemic, and since the pandemic, like they have a really hard time leaving the house. So it changed. I mean, it changed behavior and the culture of things.
Yeah, it really did.
It really changed everything. And I think it changed the culture of work as well. And how important is culture to, encouraging people to, get up, brush themselves off, and make some changes.
I mean, I think part of it is giving them some ownership of the process, right? If they feel like they have ownership and that they're part of the process, I think it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah.
If
Agreed.
the culture of the company is just like, well, we're bringing in this team, we're bringing in new software, like you guys aren't doing what you should be doing, like the process is broken, nobody's going to sign up for that. You're going to lose people.
Yeah, for sure.
Because nobody wants to be told that they're doing their job wrong.
Yeah, no one.
No one.
No one.
And so if it's a partnership, and that's something that I've learned throughout my career, is whoever you're working with, it has to be a partnership.
Yeah.
So, for the last pretty much like 15 years, it really has been me working as a partner with some other group. And, I have still ownership of things, but the partnership and me being a partner to them has really helped me succeed in making change, making process improvements, doing things that make sense. Because if you don't have them on board, you're never going to make it happen.
Yeah, it just won't happen. I like that you said that it's a partnership, because it really is. In the early 70s, right? And I would actually venture to say that it probably started right after World War II. So in the 40s and 50s is probably when this came about. It was kind of, for lack of a better term, our work cultures were very similar to the military, right? So you've got a commander in chief, and that commander in chief is going to tell you what you need to do and what you need to accomplish. And that did really well through the 50s, early 60s, and then of course late 60s and into 70s. We started to recognize this emotional skill set and component
Yeah.
to work. And and then when we entered the workforce, it was trying to understand the emotional intelligence of the organization and just starting to talk about this concept of culture and work-life balance and that kind of stuff. And then today you can't even like, turn a page in an HR handbook without hearing about work-life balance and stuff. To me, I love it because we're actually talking about the stuff that matters. Because you're absolutely right. The whole person is what comes to work. It's not just my work life and then my home life. Now, certain things are separated, of course, like we don't go about talking about very personal issues at work. But if something is going wrong at home, I'm probably going to bring an aspect of that to my work day.
And vice versa.
Yes, exactly. And so it's kind of teaching not only the current workforce, but it's teaching our family members how to recognize where stress comes from and how to handle stress as a whole person so that you don't snap at your employee because, you tripped over the dog on your way out to work that morning. It's like, that to me really is like work-life balance. It's not, I've taken enough breaks today that I feel like I, haven't had a headache in the last 2 days. It's more, how do I control my behaviors so that I can separate myself a little bit. Am I making sense?
Yeah. No, totally. Yeah. I mean, I think that good managers understand work-life balance.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Luckily I have had some really great managers, that understood, guess what? Today my water heater burst.
Yeah, exactly.
Or I've got to go to the doctor.
Yeah, exactly.
Or, I've also had some bad managers that were like, oh, you're going to the doctor for 2 hours? You better stay for 2 hours later today.
Exactly.
Okay, but can't stay today. I could stay tomorrow. Oh no, but you took the time off today.
Yeah.
Okay. That to me doesn't make sense, right?
Exactly.
Like for me, like my work-life balance, I'm actually like, I've worked from home for the last 2.5 years. And I feel like my process of working has changed because I find that, so I'm not a morning person naturally, but I have teammates or my team. I have 2 people in India, a person on the East Coast, and a person in Ireland. So my mornings
Your
are
work
full,
schedule is crazy.
right?
Yeah.
My mornings are full. And so I would prefer not to have any meetings in the morning, but I've had to adjust.
Yep. Same.
But for me to roll out of, like, I literally roll out of bed and turn my laptop on. That works for me. Yep. Like for me to shower in the morning before work, that's not my best self. My best self is like showering at noon, like during lunch.
Wow. Yeah.
But I probably work 10 to 12 hours a day.
Right now. Exactly.
Versus if I'm in the office, you're probably not going to get that many hours out of me because I have 45 minutes to commute and I need time away from my desk in the middle of the day.
Yep.
For lunch. And, and my boss knows that. My boss knows that I'm working the hours and that I'm available on my cell phone pretty much any time of the day.
Yep.
So, and that's a huge change. It's a huge process change for myself of how I work, because I never thought I'd be comfortable working outside of the office.
Yeah, I was the same way. I never thought I would either.
But like for me and my family, like this is the setup that works the best for us, quite honestly.
That's awesome.
And if I do have to go back to the office someday, it'll be another adjustment. But right now, like working from home is very important to me and my family.
Yeah.
Mostly because I have a high schooler at home,
Mhm.
and she
Yep.
has sporting events and she has things that she needs to
Yep.
get done. And my husband does go into the office every day. And,
Yep.
and that's a process change. It is a change for us. So, that's just, we didn't really start over, but
Right.
it was a change.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the same. Mine's kind of like a hybrid.
Okay.
So, so as many of the watchers and listeners have realized, especially if you follow me on LinkedIn, I started a full-time position this last year. So I have Leanierologist. I still run Leanierologist, but it's dramatically been, pulled back in terms of hours because I have a full-time position now.
Yeah.
And so I've made the adjustments with Leanierologist to be only in the evenings outside of normal working hours because I've got a full-time job I've got to take care of. And then thankfully, my organization has a hybrid approach as well. So they understand, their life happens and you're going to need to be at home sometimes.
Yep.
And that's okay because we trust that you're productive at home.
Mm-hmm.
So it's no timesheets or transactional kind of behavior.
Yeah.
It's all mutual trust and respect. Like, we hired you to do a job, you're going to do the job. And we respect that. And I think that's a good, healthy culture and climate to have in today's day and age. We have to be flexible. I remember one of the managers recently just hired somebody whose commute is going to be like an hour for them each way. And the concern was, well, that's kind of a far commute. Are they going to get burnt out? And his response to me was, well, it looks like we're going to have to make some adjustments and we're going to have to, be more open to this position being a hybrid kind of position. And we'll work it out because otherwise I'm not going to be able to hire somebody that's qualified.
Yeah.
Because that's the expectation these days.
And it really is. It
yeah.
really is the expectation, because I think if the pandemic taught us anything, is that work can get done at home.
Yes, and good work.
Good work.
Yeah.
Productive work.
Yes.
Like I was talking to my boss earlier this week and I was saying, we had people at our house last weekend, and guess what? I did 6 loads of laundry on Monday. I didn't fold them. They're still sitting at the end of my bed, but I did them like throughout the day. And it's not like it really made me any less productive. It was one of those things, though, that if I had to do it at night when I got home at 6 p.m.,
you'd be up till 1 o'clock in the morning.
I would have had to do it over like 3 days.
Yeah, it's awful.
Right. And it allowed me to do other things. So
yeah.
I think that is the expectation. And I think it should be.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, it should be. We need to make those adjustments as a society.
And I think some companies have been more successful at it than others.
Agreed. And I kind of wonder if it's the type of industry as well.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the ones that have been, no, you have to return to work, because me being a manufacturing engineer, right? It's really hard to manufacture something from home. So there's some compromise that happens there, right? If you have a manufacturing job, you do need to go into the office. But some of these industries that have been around for decades, so I'm thinking of aerospace, for instance. A lot of the aerospace type businesses, they made a call, you need to come back into the office for those positions that don't necessarily need to be in the office.
Yeah.
And then made the threat that they would lose their job. That's not promoting good cultural
Loyalty.
growth
And loyalty, really.
and loyalty. Exactly. Yeah, it's those kinds of threats tell more about the business than I think the execs realize.
Agreed. No, our leadership has brought some groups back in, but not all
Yeah.
groups.
Yeah.
And IT is one of those groups that they were like, it doesn't necessarily make sense.
Mm-mm. Yeah. Yeah, like I was saying, if you chose to be someone in production, in operations,
Obviously,
expect to go into work.
yeah. And you probably have been going into work the whole time.
Exactly. Yeah.
In that case, right? Like,
Yeah.
if you work in a store, you've been going into work.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So these, I guess, for those that are seeking, hybrid kind of roles, they need to change their thinking as well. So what kind of position do I need to, develop myself for so I can get a hybrid type role? And then search for a company that can provide that, which is really great. I love that companies are doing that now. It was necessary, really was.
Agreed.
Yeah. So for leadership, what advice would you give leadership that are trying to promote change and little adjustments, but seem to always fail? What kind of advice would you give to them?
I mean, I think it goes back to some of the other things we've talked about. I think really sometimes leadership doesn't ask people actually doing the work.
Yes, thank you. Yes, you're absolutely right.
Right? They look at the budget and we're like, we're spending $4 million on manufacturing. That's got to be the problem.
Yep.
Well, maybe you should be spending $4 million on manufacturing.
Exactly.
Like,
maybe it's a core competency.
maybe that's actually really great that you're only spending $4 million.
Yeah.
It's when you make decisions without talking to the people actually doing the work.
Yes, thank you.
Right. And I think we've all been there where things have had to happen because leadership's decided it, not the people actually doing the work.
Yeah.
Because the people actually doing the work probably know exactly what needs to happen. They probably know the problems that exist within it. And if we solve those problems, we'd get more benefit from it than some of the things leadership necessarily wants to do.
Yeah.
Leadership obviously needs to be involved. But when like you want to start, like, let's say a lean project, it should come from the managers, not the VPs. Like, it should come from the managers up. Talk to your managers and say, okay, well, what are some of our problem areas?
Yeah,
what is this costing us? What are some of, and then roll up. And then you can see, okay, this makes sense. Let's try to do this. And the other thing is, don't try to do everything at once.
Thank you. Yes. Don't try to do everything at once. Huge mistake.
Because sometimes what leadership, especially new leadership, doesn't understand is how changes in one, like, say, department affect another department.
Totally.
Right.
Totally.
Like, you think that a change that happens in accounting is not going to affect HR, but guess what? It does.
Yeah. And sometimes that's a bigger interaction impact than they realize.
Exactly. And so when you're trying to do 25 different projects all at the same time, it's actually a huge mistake.
Yes.
It's overwhelming your people.
Yeah.
And they can't handle that much. I mean, if they want a work-life balance, they're not going to be able to handle it long term.
Yeah. No, definitely not long term. They're going to burn out really, really quick. Especially if you have some really good subject matter expert type people,
Yes,
because they get thrown in on like 15 different projects at the same
exactly.
time.
Yep.
And then they get super burnt out. And it's like, it's not their fault that they're excellent at what they do.
Yes. Well, and that's the other thing that I've seen sometimes happen, right? And I've seen it happen at multiple companies is especially when you get new leadership, they're trying to make a
Yes.
mark, right?
Yes.
They're trying to prove their worth.
Mhm.
And sometimes the worth is to just learn the process first.
Exactly. Exactly.
And then come in as a new set of eyes and say, okay, well, I see that this process isn't really working.
Mhm.
What can we do to improve? Instead of just getting rid of some of your subject matter experts.
Yeah, exactly.
Because, oh, they make too much money. We've got to cut the budget.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
Blows my mind.
that just put us in a much worse position.
Totally.
And now we have to hire 4 people to fill that one person's position.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like shooting from the hip. I mean, I get that you want to make a splash and, be the hero, if you will.
Yes.
That's like the hero complex where I was hired because, I'm brilliant and I can fix this. Well, show your brilliance by being humble about it and asking the people that have been in the system for a while.
Yes.
Because who knows? Maybe those subject matter experts that are, making a lot of money, right? They're in that position for a reason. Exactly.
Exactly.
So they may come up with the solution where you don't have to hire an army of people to solve this problem. They will come up with a system solution or a process solution that would fix the issue.
Yeah.
But you've seen probably as much as I have, when arrogance comes into the leader's behavior, it's the quickest way to kill culture at the company and to also kill loyalty, like you were saying.
Absolutely.
Because a leader coming in with arrogance is very difficult. I've been on the receiving end of that, which was not fun because they came in, I want to make a splash, and they tried to throw me under the bus in the process, and it was not pretty.
Yeah.
I lost faith in the organization when that happened. Like it was instant morale killer. And it's super sad when that happens.
It is. And once you lose morale, it's really difficult to get it back.
It is. It really is. Well, and we both have been in organizations that have had major layoffs.
Absolutely.
And it's because, somebody in the government decided we no longer need that program. So the entire program goes. Same thing, aerospace was the same way. And it always was around Christmas. I never understood that. I guess
I never do either.
Budget.
Yeah.
I don't know. But it was always around Christmas. And it's like, wow, we're going to do that to people at the time of year where they most need the funding and stability. We're going to do that to them then. It's awful.
Yep.
Well, and how do you recover from that? I personally, thankfully, I've never been part of a layoff. I've never been laid off. Knock on wood. Please don't do it now. But how do you encourage somebody to, get back on the horse and apply for jobs again?
So I too have never been part of a layoff. I know a lot of people that have been laid off.
Yeah, same.
My husband was laid off right when COVID started. And it's hard. It's hard to kind of focus on it's easier to focus on all the things that you did wrong, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And so it's really focused, okay, what did you like about your job?
Hmm.
What did you not like? And and a lot of times, and sometimes a layoff is, you know, quite honestly, like for Dave, getting laid off then was probably the best thing that could have happened to him
Yeah,
because of all of the experiences we've had since then.
yeah.
But at the time, it's really difficult.
Hmm.
You know, Dave has found a position that fits him and his personality really well.
That's awesome.
But it's hard, right? It's hard finding that right position.
For
Now,
sure.
I'm not sure if I've ever found the right position, like the perfect position for me, you know.
Yeah.
But you know, there are parts about every job that I really enjoy, and there's parts that you don't.
Oh, for sure.
It's
It's work.
it's work, and it's
Yeah,
called work for a reason.
yeah,
It'd be called
exactly.
fun if it wasn't, you know. But I think, you know, I think layoffs are very similar to like when somebody close to you dies.
Yeah.
And like just
Mourning period.
mourning period, right?
Hmm.
And figuring out, okay, how to get back on the horse and figuring
Hmm.
out where to go next.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's hard because I've never been in that position
Mhm.
to really say the right thing. Like,
Yeah, understood.
you're like, what do I say? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
like what to say and what not to say is really hard to judge,
yeah,
having not been there.
exactly. And so, you know, I mean, with the way that the world works now, I think, you know, to not ever be laid off is probably not going to happen, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah, agreed.
um, because companies get bought and sold and
Hmm.
redistributed, and all crazy things happen
Yeah,
nowadays. So I think, you know, it is, again, it's not starting again. It's just looking at your old job and seeing, okay, what was I good at? What was successful? What wasn't? What do I want
yeah,
to avoid next time? And
yeah,
sometimes,
yeah,
and it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with you as a person either.
yeah, yeah. Most often it doesn't
It
in
doesn't.
a layoff. Yeah.
Yeah, most of the time it doesn't. It literally is budget.
Hmm. Yeah, it truly is. Firing is different, of course.
Yeah,
But layoffs, it most often is a budget decision. Um,
exactly.
um, a budget decision or a we don't make the product anymore kind of
Mhm.
decision as
Yeah,
well. Um, so yeah, it's a hard one because I too have seen, you know, loved ones get laid off, and it's hard. Um, and it's really hard to separate yourself from the layoff as well and realize that it isn't my fault. It's really not my fault. It was a budget decision. Um, but for those folks, you know, that really take it hard and are trying to figure themselves out, might be a good opportunity to talk to a professional
yeah,
about it. Um, there's never any harm talking to a mental health professional, truly. Um, I've done it and I found some great rewards from it, and I'm grateful that I did it. I look back on some of my most traumatic experiences in the workforce, and now they're less impactful on me.
yeah,
Um, and I can take the learning from them, which is so much better. Cassie and I talked about that a lot at the end of last year, about how important it is for that whole person at work and that whole person
yeah,
at home, to be really comfortable with yourself, if you will.
yeah. Authentic,
Really
your
important.
authentic self.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, this has been awesome. Is there anything that we've missed? that you would like to talk about or share?
I mean, I can't think of anything right now. We've covered quite a bit, so
Yeah. And I mean, that hour flew by.
it did.
It's been really, really interesting hearing your perspective, and I really appreciate you coming and talking to us about this. It's been really rewarding for me. It reminds me that everything's okay as well for me. So I appreciate that.
No problem, Michelle.
And then at some point, we are coming to Texas to visit.
Yes.
Some point. Well, hopefully we'll, invite you back at some point and chat again. It would be great to have you come back and talk to our viewers again. It was great. Thank you so much.
Anytime. Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.